Do you want to start with Arachin or us? Arios?
I want to start with Arachin.
All right, okay. Okay. Hey, babe. If one says, I take it upon myself to give the value of my arm, we evaluate him to determine how much he is worth with the arm and how much he is worth without the arm. This is the stringency of vows of worth over Arachin vows. And the stringency of Arachin vows over vows of worth is in what manner? If one said, I take upon myself to give my Eric and he died, the heirs must give it. But if one said, I take upon myself to give my worth and he died, the heirs need not give it, for the dead have no worth. If one says, I take upon myself to give the Eric of my arm or the Eric of my leg, he has said nothing. But if one says, I take upon myself to give the Eric of my head, or the Eric of my liver, he must give the Eric of his entire self. This is the rule. For anything upon which one's life depends, he gives the Eric of his entire self. If one says, I take upon myself to give half my Eric, he gives half his Eric. But if he says, I take upon myself to give the Eric of half of myself, he gives his whole Eric. If one says, I take upon myself to give half my worth, he gives half his worth. But if he says, I take upon myself to give the worth of half of myself, he gives his whole worth. This is the rule. For anything upon which one's life depends, you must give the Eric of his entire self. If one says, I take upon myself to give the Eric of so-and-so, even if both the vower and the subject of the vow died, the heirs must give it. If he says, I take upon myself to give the worth of so-and-so, if the vower died, the heirs must give it. But if the subject of the vow died, the heirs need not give it, for the dead have no worth.
Okay. Shor ze olah. So if a person says this ox over here is going to be a korban olah, or bayis ze korban, or this house is dedicated to the temple. Meis hashor nafal habayis. If the ox died or the house fell, eno chayv l'shalem. Right. That's when we often talk about the difference between harei ze and harei alai. If he says it on that thing, then only that thing is sanctified, and he doesn't have any responsibility for it. But if he says the is shore ze alai olah, if he says the value of this shore is on me for an olah. Now, does the word demay appear in yours?
Right.
The value of the shore, yeah.
Sure is that right?
It's in brackets in my edition.
Oh,
but
it's not here.
When he uses the word alai, the point is that he uses the word alai. That means he's taking responsibility for it. Or bayis ze alai korban. He says, I'm going to give the value of this house basically as a korban. Meisa shor nafal habayis chayav l'shalem. He's still chayav to give, and this Mishnah is just clarifying for us. We've seen it many times. The difference between harei ze and harei alai here is actually probably the most specific place where we detail what is the halacha of harei ze versus harei alai. Okay, Mishnah Vav, chayve arachim, people who have promised to give an erech and they're not paying up. The mashkenim osam. Then the temple treasurers are entitled to come and take security from them in order to make sure that they actually pay up. And this contrasts with chayve chatas ve'ashamos ein mashkenin osam. So if we know that somebody is chayav a chatas or an asham, we don't take a security from them. Why? Because chatas and asham are not voluntary things. They're things that come if you have a chait that you need to get a kapara for. And our presumption is that people want the kapara. So we don't need to hold a gun to their head and say, bring your korban. They'll bring it because they want the kapara themselves. Olos ushlamim, but back to the voluntary offerings of an ola and a shlamim, memashkenin osam. If they promised it, then and they're not paying up, then the temple treasurers again can go and take a security from them to make sure that they bring them. Because if there's no pressure of this is for a chait, oh yeah, I know I said I would bring an ola, yeah I know I said I would bring a shlamim, but busy life, I'll get there. So if there's no pressure, then the temple has to apply pressure. Even though he doesn't get kapara until he actually wants to do it. It must be according to his free will. Kofin so Achi Omar Rotzani. So what do we right? So all of Shlamim are not accepted by Hashem. It's not like it's not desired by Hashem unless he's bringing it on a free will. Because if somebody Lechatchila said, you need to bring a korban olah, he says, I don't really want to, and like they start whipping him and saying, bring it. That's not liritzono. It's not satisfying anyone. It's not satisfying Hashem. But it has to be his will. But once he's made a promise, then they force him until it's this idea that that a person's yetzer hara is overcoming him, his laziness, his whatever, and that's preventing him from fulfilling his yetzer tov. We know that in his heart of hearts, he really wants to bring it because he said he was going to bring it, but his yetzer hara is stopping him. So now we're taking away that yetzer hara. Once we start like forcing him and making it uncomfortable for him to do what his yetzer hara says, then the yetzer hara says, oh, you know what, I also want to bring. Then he's totally in alignment, and it seems like a bit of a twist to say, okay, we're trying to find ways to justify applying pressure to him, but it's a statement in the fundamental goodness of the person that really he wants to do the right thing.
Right.
But it's just his yetzer hara is getting in the way. And we do the same thing, says the Mishnah. If based in his paskin that he needs to give his wife a get, so we apply physical pressure to him. We can hire goons to go and beat him up until he realizes that he actually really does want to divorce his wife. Once the Beis Din is paskin, his yetzer tov wants to do what the Beis Din said.
Okay.
Okay, Shum hayasomim shloshim yom. Now, when you have the property that's fallen into the hands of orphans, right? And the creditors are coming to collect debts from their father, from the estate. So we try and act in the interests of the orphans, and make sure that they get the best possible price for the property that they're going to have to sell in order to cover the debts. So what they say is they give 30 days of announcements that this property is going to be for sale. And that way, more and more buyers can hear, oh, this property is for sale, and you have more demand, and the price goes up. Okay. Shuma hekdesh shishim yom, and when it comes to hekdesh, when they want to assess a field that has been dedicated to hekdesh in order to and somebody wants to redeem it, they give that 60 days to see how many people are interested in it and what price it would go for. And we announce every morning and evening that this field is going to be for sale. If somebody dedicates his property to the temple, however, he's still got a chiyuv to his wife, and so the kasuba has a lien on the property, and he went and dedicated it to the temple. So now, in such a case, his wife still has first claim. She doesn't get gazumped by the temple. She's got the right to the money, and he made a hekdesh that he wasn't entitled to make. So now we have an interesting machlokes over here. Rabbi Eliezer Omer kasher yigarshena yadir hana. When he divorces her, he must also make a neder that he's not allowed to benefit from his wife again, so to prevent himself from remarrying her. Now we'll see why he needs to do this, because he's concerned that this is a kanunya, that he was makdish this field, and then he later regretted it, and he said, look, let me just divorce my wife, and my wife will my wife will take the land back from the temple. She'll say, look, it's not yours, it's mine. My ketubah is contingent on, and the gizbar will say, oh well, you're right, okay, and he'll disappear, and he'll say, and the husband will say, okay, is he gone? And he'll remarry his wife. So that way he gets out of the hekdesh.
Right.
Okay, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Eino tzarich. He doesn't have to do such a thing. Now, the interesting part about this is that why is this? It's because of a more fundamental machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Do you recall when we were talking about Hekdesh Taos, when we said he erroneously said something would be Hekdesh? Like, for example, he said if he reaches into his pocket, let's say, tell me if this is familiar. If he says the gold dinar that comes out of my pocket, now will be hekdesh, and he reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver dinar. So Beis Hillel say that's not hekdesh. It was an error. It was a mistake. There's no hekdesh here at all. And Beis Shammai say the hekdesh taos is hekdesh. It's still hekdesh. So now Rabbi Eliezer is a Beis Shammai nik. And he holds that, okay, he made a neder, but he didn't realize that his wife had the rights over this property. So it's nonetheless going to be binding on him, even if he divorces her and comes back into the marriage, and it's going to be a chiyuv on him. Whereas Rabbi Yeshua says there's no hekdesh here at all, and there's no reason therefore to make a neder that he can't benefit from his wife again. So, similar case says the Mishnah carrying on. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Av ha'arev leisha b'ksuba sais. A similar situation over here, where a woman wasn't sure about her husband if he was good for the ksuba or not, and a man came and said, "Listen, I'll be his guarantor. That if he divorces you and he can't pay you your ksuba, I'll pay your ksuba." So he signs as an arev. Okay. Now the husband Taka divorces her. Yadir Hana, he does have to make a neder of Hana on his wife. Why? Shema Yase Kanunya al Nechasav Shalzeh, because they might have made a plot against this guy against the guarantor. So he divorces her. She claims a kasuba from the third party, and then she says, "Oh, you know what? I still love you. Let's get back together." And then they've walked away with the money that this poor third party guy went and gave them. So in that case, we would require him to make a neder that he's not allowed to benefit from his wife. Okay, back to Bechoros. We'll come back to Arachin in a minute, because we're going to finish Bechoros and start Arachin again.
I thought we had one more to do.
No, that's three Mishnayos from today.
Okay. All right. So go back to the chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And we have chet.
Yeah.
Two animals exit together. He counts them 2 by 2. If he counted, there was 1, the 9th and 10th are ruined. If the 9th and 10th exit together, the 9th and 10th are ruined. If he called the 9th animal 10th and the 10th 9 and the 11th one 10th, and all three of them are consecrated. The 9th may be eaten in the blemished state. The 10th is mitzvah, and the 11th is brought to shlom, an offering, and it can produce a truma. These are the words of Reb Meir. Said Reb Yehuda, can a truma produce a truma? Can a tamora produce a truma? They said in the name of Reb Meir, if it was a tamora, it would be not offered. And if you call the 9th one 10th, the 10th one and the 10th one 10th, and the 11th one 10th, the 11th is not consecrated. This is the rule. As long as the designation 10th has not been uprooted from it, the 11th one is not consecrated.
And back to the beginning of Arachin.
All persons are fit to declare an Erik vow, or to be subject of an Erik vow, a vow, another worth, or to have their worth vowed. Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, women, and slaves. The person of undetermined gender and a hermaphrodite are fit to vow another's worth or to have their worth vowed, and are fit to declare an Erik vow, but not the subject of an Erik vow. So one cannot be the subject of an Erik vow unless he is definitely made male or female. A deaf, mute, a mentally incompetent person and a minor are fit to have their worth vowed and to be the subject of an Erik vow, but they are not fit to vow someone's worth or to declare an Erik vow because they have no understanding. An infant less than a month old is fit to have his worth vowed, but not to be the subject of an Erik vow. Okay. A non-Jew, Reb Meir says, he is fit to be the subject of an Erik vow, but he cannot declare an Erik vow. Rabbi Yehuda says he is fit to declare an Erik vow, but not to be the subject of an Erik vow. Both concur that they are fit to vow someone's worth and to have their worth vowed.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Chulin.
Yeah. Ruling base. The skins of the following are like their flesh: the skins of a man, the skin of a domestic pig. Rabbi Yossi says, although the skin of a wild pig, the skin of the hump of a tender camel, the skin of the head of a young calf, the skin of the hooves, the skin of the pudenda, the skin of a fetus, the skin under the bat tail, and the skin of a hedgehog, the chameleon, the lizard, and the snail. Rabbi Yehuda says a lizard is like a weasel, but any of them that was tanned or trodden, as long as required for tanning, is tahor, except for the skin of a man. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says the right shiratzim have skin. The 8 shiratzim have skins. If one flays either an animal or a beast, either kosher or non-kosher, either small or large, or a spread, enough to grasp it for a flask until he flays the beast. Flays the breast. And if he flays it from the feet, it is all considered attached as regards tumah, both to contact tumah and to convey tumah. The skin on the neck, the Rabbi Yochanan says it is not considered attached, but the Chachamim say it is considered attached until he flays it completely. If a hide had an olive of flesh, one who touches a shred that protrudes from it, or a hair that is opposite it, is tamei. If there were 2 half olive-sized pieces of flesh on it, it conveys tumah through carrying, but not through contact. These are the words of Rabbi Yisrael. Rabbi Akiva says neither through contact nor through carrying. But Rabbi Akiva agrees that if one thrusts a chip through 2 half-sized olive pieces and move them, he is tamei. And why does Rabbi Akiva declare them tahor when they are on the hide? Because the hide renders them negligible. The marrow bone of a corpse.
That's it. We're done. Okay, Horayos.
Okay. Preceding the festivals, literally.
No,
yeah.
You're in. That is your. That's a.
The Avodah sorry.
Yeah.
If the court ruled to violate one of the commandments stated in the Torah, and an individual went and acted erroneously on their word, regardless of whether they acted and they acted along with them, or they acted and he acted after them, or whether they did not act but he did, he is exempt because he relied on the court. If the court ruled and one of them knew that they had erred, and one was a student worthy of ruling, and he went and acted on their word, whether they acted and he acted with them, or they acted and he acted after them, or they did not act but he did, this one is liable because he did not only rely on the court. This is the rule. One who relies on himself is liable, while one who relies on the court is exempt. If the court ruled and realized that they had erred and retracted their ruling, whether they had already brought their atonement or whether they did not bring their atonement, and he proceeded to act on their word, Rav Shimon exempts him. But Rav Eliezer says it is doubtful. Which case is doubtful? If he remained at home, he is liable. If he went overseas, he's exempt. Said Rabbi Akiva, I agree in the case that he is closer to exemption than to obligation. But Rav Azai said to him, in what way is this different from one remaining at home? Rabbi Akiva replied in that it was possible for the remaining one at home to have heard, while the which one was impossible for him to have heard. If the court ruled to uproot the entire corpus of a law, for example, if they said that there is no need of prohibition in the Torah, or that there was no Sabbath prohibition in the Torah, or that there was no idol worship in the Torah, they are exempt. If they rule to abolish part of the law and to rein part, they are liable. How so? If they said that there is a need of prohibition in the Torah, but one who cohabitates with a woman observing one day against another is exempt, or that there is a Sabbath prohibition in the Torah, but one who carries from a private domain to a public domain is exempt, or that there is a prohibition on idol worship in the Torah, but one who bows is exempt, they are liable. As it is said, some matter will be forgotten, some matter, but not the entire corpus.
Yeah. Kiddushin.
Okay. We may sweep out the fleeting trough from before a stall ox, and we may move it to.
You're in Shabbos.
I'm not doing straw that is on the bed. One may not move.
Oh, wait, you're in Shabbos. I'm in Kiddushin.
Oh, because I put it down below. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You pile them up and take them one in an order. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Aleph bet.
Nice.
A Jewish bondman is acquired with money or with a document and acquires himself with years or with yovel or with a deduction of money. A Jewish bondwoman has the advantage over him that she acquires herself with signs. One whose ear is bored is acquired by the act of boring, and acquires himself with yovel or with the death of the master. A Canaanite slave is acquired with money, with a document, or with an act of possession, and he acquires himself with money through others and with a document on his own. They are the words of Reb Meir. The sages, however, say with money on his own and with a document through others, as long as the money is from others. A large animal is acquired by Masira and
Small animal.
small animal by being lifted. These are the words of Reb Meir, Reb Eliezer. The comment, however, say a small animal is acquired by Masika. Shika. And now we have shocks. Dalit. We may sweep out the feeding trough from before a stall ox, and we may move it to the side because of the excretum. These are the words of Reb Dosa, but the comment prohibit it. We may take feed from one animal and place it before another animal on Shabbos. Straw that is on the bed, one may not move it with his hand, but he may move it with his body. If it was fodder for animals, if it was a pillow or a sheet over it, he may move it with his hand. A householder's clothes press we may undo, but we may not press down. A launderer's press, however, we may not touch. Rabbi Yehuda says if it was undone from before the Sabbath, one may undo it completely and remove it with ordinary food. Rabbi Yehuda says we may also remove one part of truma.
You skipped a page.
I skipped the page again. A man may pick up a son, although there is a stone in his hand, and a basket, although there is a stone in it. Similarly, we may move contamination truma, teruma, together with an uncontaminated teruma, or with an ordinary food. But Yehuda says we may also remove one part of teruma from a mixture with 100 parts of ordinary food.
Okay. And Taurus.
We are at Tet. If a dead sheret is found in the mill, only the place that it touches tummy. If there was liquid floating, everything is tummy. If the dead sheret was found on top of the leaves, they should ask the pressers if they can say we did not touch. The dead sheret was touching the compressed mass, even by a hair, it's tummy. The dead sheret was found on top of chunks, and it is touching the volume of an egg. It is tummy. If there were chunks on top of chunks, then even if it is touching the volume of an egg, only the place that it touches tummy. If it was found between the wall and the olives, they are tummy, they are tahor. If it was found on the roof, the olives in the holder are tahor. If it was found in the holder, the olives on the roof are tummy. And if it was found burnt on the olives, and similarly in the case of a single garment, it is tahor. For all cases concerning tuma, follow the time at which they were found. One who locks the olive press because of the presses, but they were in the olive press vessels, they were tummy midras. But Meir says the olive press is tummy, and Rabbi Yehuda says the olive press is tahor. Rabbi Shimon says that the vessels are tahor for them, the olive press is tummy. If the vessels are tummy for them, the olive press is tahor. And Rabbi Yossi says, why are the contents of the press tummy? Only because Amaretz are not acquainted with the truma of movement.
Okay. Zeho.
Okay.
Okay. That's it. Have a wonderful
Shabbos. Enjoy, and
Sunday.
Sunday, we'll probably end early. You'll end the same time because the sleep is going to be early. So
Yeah. Okay, that's true.